Okay, so thanks, Jeremy, to talk about how to apply the API standard for the scale. So in the next section, we are talking about how the digital transformation facing in the API and also the potentially pitfall progression and also the PET. So we are now having Sonal from eXate to talk about that. So can you hear me well?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, good. The voice is loud and clear. So I can see your slide as well. So I pass the stage to you. So thank you.
Right, great. Thanks a lot, Patrick. Hi, I'm Sonal. I'm the CTO and co-founder of eXate. And essentially what we do is, and what our vision is to be the trusted and secure access of data. That's what our global vision is, to be that standard across the board. A bit about my background before I kick in, to be fair. Prior to setting up eXate, I was the head of digital assets at HSBC. And one of the things that, a lot of the learnings that we see and the things that I'm going to be covering in this presentation has been predominantly around some of the challenges I had in a corporate environment. Anything that came to access of data, being able to do any cross-border data transfers, trying to create any global solutions. Software wasn't actually the issue. It was all the controls, it was all the issues around it. And we've ended up having to create a solution around how do we actually manage some of these requirements. You're always going to have different people from different jurisdictions that will say that they're the experts. So how do you manage all of that when it comes to releasing software, releasing APIs, and so some of those other challenges that will come with it? And I'll talk through it as we go through this presentation. So one of the main things that we do see is that API data security is now going to be a key focus for many organizations, if not all, considering 91% of organizations have had some sort of security breach with their APIs already, and 85% having multiple. It's a multi-million-dollar security instance now. So, and I'm going to cover what are the pitfalls when you get it wrong, and what could you do to potentially make it right. It's a bit of a shocking number there, but by 2025 we're looking at that almost 50% of APIs will not be managed. It does mean that we're just putting more and more risk in. But what happens when you've got that risk? What happens to the people around you? What happens to your organization? And especially what it looks like particularly in the region. And one of the key things that we're seeing is it's not just about what access you're giving to data and how do you promote those things around reusability, but privacy will be that differentiator that's going to help you. If you build it in, you build those controls in correctly, you're going to be able to not only reuse your APIs, but we're going to be looking at how you can easily manage your estate where it comes to being able to manage that access and what privacy you need to be applying to it. So as I was saying, it's going to be a key focus for many organizations. It was quite interesting to actually see Samsung's advert at the moment, where privacy is that differentiator for them. They are advertising that your privacy is first. Apple's just come up with another update, and everything's around what privacy settings that you got, what can Safari see, all of those things. So we're seeing privacy becoming more and more a part of everything that we're seeing today. So going back to APIs, and we want to talk about what are the potential pitfalls. APIs have been amazing. What we've been able to do, and going back to Patrick's point before, with Jeff Bezos saying, be API first, always think about that service-based architecture, always think about every single service that you're having that's going to be external facing. So if you're building with those sort of things in your mindset, so what do you need to do to make it external? What do you need to be able to do? But APIs, they've been this solution to a massive problem that we had in terms of digital, but it has come with its own challenges. One is Gartners are now saying that APIs are the most frequent attack vector. And secondly, as I was mentioning, 91% of organizations have had some sort of security incident. And overall, these micro conditions that are driving privacy are going to be around those breaches. But there is that regulatory risk. 80%, that's 2/3 of the world's population, will have some sort of data protection regulation around it over the course of by the end of next year. So that's a huge number. We're talking about 2/3 of the population are going to be covered by this, and they've got rights as individuals to be able to ensure that their data is safe. Secondly, is that digital risk. We've built software at a pace that we've never seen before, and it's always worth taking a step back to see, well, what's actually happened? What have we had to roll out when we're working from home? All of those sides of it. But what if we're rolling out software at that sort of pace? What controls have had to be loosened? What happened and what risk are we sitting on? And then finally, it's that 87% of us have said we will not deal with companies that we don't trust how they're dealing with our data. And that's a huge number. That if you think that someone is not going to deal with you because they're concerned about your security practices, that's something that's worth having in as a part of your governance structure to make sure that you don't actually hit that, and you're not your organization is not being faced with those sort of challenges. And the importance of that has now led to 94% of companies now providing privacy metrics to their board. So we can't actually cover this without actually saying what's going on in the region. And overall, we know that the privacy regulation within Hong Kong is, or the personal data regulations around it have got 6 main core principles that we are looking out for, and these are like common, very standard across what we're seeing across the rest of the globe. But there are some like slight nuances, and there are definitely things around, especially with China, around data localization and what do you need to do to be able to comply with personal data and it's not only personal data. If we're dealing with financial data, and we are, so a big part of, I understand a lot of the audience are from financial backgrounds, insurance backgrounds, those sort of organizations. Yeah, we know that you also have got additional regulations that you need to be looking at. There are additional controls that you need to look at, and the consequences of getting it wrong are pretty high. So like looking at the 6 principles that they discussed. So it is about the purpose and manner of what you're collecting personal data. I'll cover an example what happened with Twitter when they collected information for multi-factor authentication, and what were the consequences of getting that wrong. So you're only and so when we're thinking about it from an API perspective, when we're saying what are we collecting this personal data for, we always think about, well, what information is access control, what information are we actually putting out there? This is the reverse as well. So what information are you actually collecting? What are you actually bringing in? What is if you're looking at open banking, for example, do you need social security numbers and all of that really sensitive information about an individual before you actually put that in your database? Or like more importantly, and one of the pitfalls around it is putting that information in log files. So taking that payload, putting it into a log file in a unencrypted form, and having anybody to have access to it. That is where it starts getting really sketchy, when you need to be making sure that you've got those controls in place. The accuracy and the duration of retention, that is a common one. How long are you keeping the information for? You make sure you don't keep it for longer than you need to. And the use of that personal data, all personal data will be, the way that you're using it for the purpose that you're saying you're using it for. Data security, so you're making sure now this is one of the interesting ones, and there's a lot of debate around what is the right privacy enhancing technique to use when you're looking at it. Is encryption good enough? Do you need to pseudonymize it? Do you need to do any other types of things? When we are looking at data, like things like encryption, if you've had the pleasure of reading any of these regulations, encryption is deemed still to be personal data. So when you're talking about sending information across borders, when you've still got data that's in its encrypted form, that's still personal. As you may still be caught out. You can't just send information out to a different jurisdiction. You might need something completely different to make sure that data is at rest and stored in data within that jurisdiction. So there are a lot of different things. And we do understand that not every developer can be an expert in every single privacy enhancing technique, but there is software out there, especially like companies like ours, that will help you and already give you the tools to be able to do that very, very easy. The openness and transparency. So people do want to know what data you're holding about them, what the policies and practices are around that. So we have like every single website that you've probably been to will say, this is what we're collecting your information for. Nobody wants to trawl through it, but trying to make that into easy, simple language about what are you actually doing with it, how you're handling it, how you're protecting it. All of that becomes more and more important as what the regulations are telling you to do. It is the law. And access and correctness. So this is, it is one that's near and dear to my heart, is who's accessing what. Are we applying principles of least privilege? Are we holding any sort of data or that we shouldn't be? And if the individual asks for access around who's been looking at my data, what have they been doing with it, what information do you have on me, you should be able to give that information back out to the individuals. And that those are the 6 main core principles that you've got. Just having a quick look at the privacy regulation at a glance. Significant amendments were made in 1996, where in 2012, apologies, where the key focus was around marketing regulation and how are you using that information. We are constantly, if you speak to other types of consultancies around this, it's all about hyper-personalization. But to do those sort of things, you need to be able to access that data, but make sure you're doing it in a lawful manner. There was further amendments in 2021, and it was a term I'd never heard before. It was around doxing. So everything was around this Doxing Act. This is about what information are you collecting and how are you targeting individuals, and are you putting information on like search engines, social media platforms, all of those. If you put information about an individual in a public domain, what are the consequences of doing that? So it's an interesting one, because I've not seen that in so much in other regulations just yet, but it's very, very interesting that they are doing more and more around this space. We can't just focus on like the Hong Kong laws, because the cybersecurity laws that are coming from China are incredibly tough as well, and some of the fines that have come with that have been extremely high. So we'll just cover it at a bit of a glance. But when we're seeking to protect personal information, it's when we're looking at any sort of information that we're collecting on Chinese individuals, it's worth understanding behind it. Well, what was the goal behind it? What are they trying to achieve by it? So they're a big part of it has been around what information can be shared outside of China. First and foremost, we know that there's a lot of things around state-backed attacks. To China, to protect it, has said we're going to keep information within China. So that becomes incredibly difficult. So while I was at HSBC, that was a huge issue for us in what we can and can't do with information. Trying to get information to create global solutions that help relationship managers around what their clients are doing to benefit from global systems that we've already created was near impossible. So we had to always release softwares, set up teams within those jurisdictions. But are there any other techniques that we could be using that could help promote some of that global use? And as we are looking at APIs, we are trying to do things like create one customer view. We are trying to create one transaction view. But with some of the pitfalls with regulation, it becomes more and more challenging, and you have to be more and more creative on how you're going to actually create these global systems. And typically, the answer's always been, why don't we just create another API that's just for China and have that all of those rules around it? But that becomes maintenance. We do recognize, again, from a development perspective, everyone absolutely loves to write software. Maintaining software, not so much. So again, what kind of things can you be adding into your CI/CD pipeline? What kind of things can you be doing around continual testing to make sure that you're not falling foul of any of these regulations? I'm going to try and get through this a little bit faster now because I'm mindful of time. When we think of financial services, we do have, again, that localized processing of financial information. And when investigations do happen around in more regulated industries, you can see that this potentially has got really massive pitfalls for it. So Didi was fined at 8 billion yuan. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. But there were around 3 major laws concerning cybersecurity, data security, and personal information protection. The latter of the two were only brought into effect after the CAC began its investigations around it. And what was interesting about it is that it was the company's chairman and executives were all individually fined. They are taking this very, very seriously. So when the impact is, it's not just about what your organization is, what fine it's been doing. So when you talk about things like Twitter, it's just a drop in the ocean. These are personal fines that people are getting right now. So yeah, we like going back now talking about Twitter, that this is probably one of the most interesting things that I'd seen. And this is all about what are you using that information for? So all well and good that we've got we've got firewalls built in, all of those things, but what happens when you actually misuse data by accident? And everyone could see how this could potentially happen. So Twitter was fined $150 million. And this was because they collected users' phone numbers for multi-factor authentication. But what they ended up doing is someone found those numbers and said, oh, wouldn't it be great to market to these individuals by text? And that was breaking the law. That was the information, it wasn't tagged with any sort of metadata to say why this information was collected to start with. And then it was used in an incorrect manner. This violated both EU and US laws. So just getting back to what the potential pitfalls were around my corporate roles around APIs and the journey that we had, it was great when we first started. We had a gateway, we had a producer, we had a consumer, and it was wonderful. I had full visibility. All of the different teams had different visibility on what information was traveling between where. So with the consumer, we know about the consumer, we know about the producer. But when it starts getting a challenge is when it becomes really, really popular and we start losing visibility. So as I was saying, you'll end up with a multiple customer object. You'll have a China customer object. You'll have a US customer object. And we're kind of moving away from those design practices that we wanted to have initially, was where we've got one customer object or we've got one account object, and we're able to reuse those information, have those defined contracts and deal with, and be able to give that information. And then we lose sight of that. So we start building discovery services and we build that service mesh. So we've got machines finding other APIs, we've got services finding other services. It becomes really, really difficult to manage. And if you were to do that again, what kind of things, so this is what from our experience as a company, if we were to do this again, what controls would we have put into place? And what we're looking to hear is for the gateways to solve some of those issues. What we would have done is made sure from the beginning that we had security and privacy patterns built into our gateways. And when we're talking about those privacy controls, we want to set these patterns to simplify and reuse. And we're just setting that pattern to start with to promote that reusability. Just quickly to get through the rest of it. We are, as a company, we don't think that once you've done this protection, you can get away with not, as we're evolving, as we're asking more and more requirements, what can we do to continually test this? So this is the types of patterns that we're looking at putting into our gateways. So first is you always locate and classify what your API traffic is. And then we've got tooling within our set to analyze and learn about what are those risks, what are we breaking. It's not just about different data regulations, it is within financial regulations, all of those things, and start learning and building models about what risks are we actually posing by adding that new attribute. With our platform, we can immediately solve those. So we can automatically set it to say, actually, we want to be protecting this information. Not everyone should have that role-based access or that the old ways of being able to do it. We look at attribute-based access, so we can look at individual bits about the data in context and say, can we solve this automatically? And then, of course, we have to continually be testing this. We know this is an evolving landscape, and we should be looking at ensuring that we're continually testing and that the cycle goes on. The gateways are doing much, much more to enable data in motion. So we are looking at things like gRPC, etc. Gateways are, from calling it an API gateway, we're just looking at gateways now because they are doing so much more. And there is a lot that we could be doing more to put these governance patterns in all of these technologies. But overall, we need to be protecting data everywhere. If we look at the way our data assets are, we're not only consuming information from APIs, we are connecting directly to data sources, we're connecting to data virtualization tools, and we need to be thinking about what pattern could we be putting across our architecture in general, what interfaces are we using to connect to that information, and how many entitlement systems do we have? Are we able to look at creating a common way that we can take entitlements from many different places and be able to start enforcing that on data in a consistent manner? So with that, I will wrap up and to see if there's any questions.
Hello, Sonal. So thanks for your sharing. So I would like to ask a bit of the question. So you mentioned that you propose that there will be an API gateway. There's a layer between the API gateway for the data governance. So you also mentioned about the Hong Kong DPDO, the China cybersecurity rule. So how exactly your thoughts is? For example, this rule, is it we need to implement ourselves, or how we can handle that? Because this may be changed, sometimes it may be very sharp or solid. Do you have any quick supplement on that way?
Yeah, absolutely. So that big part of what we're looking to do is take some of those challenges away, because we are in an evolving landscape. We can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow, in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, a year down the line. So to build that into individual services is becoming more and more of a challenge, or expecting the back ends to even know who the consumer is even more so challenging. So we can look to the gateways to say, actually the gateways, so we're not looking to be a proxy, we're not looking to be any network sniffing or any of those sort of tools, but gateways themselves can provide a lot of that service. We know about the consumer, we know about that data. So you could create central services that are looking and overlaying security and those privacy at that layer. And that's technology like ours that will sit there and allow you to say, it's raining on a Thursday and Patrick's wearing green socks. He's not allowed to see that data. If something like that happens, and that's the new regulation that comes into effect, you don't want to be writing that in every single service. So what we're enabling you to do is manage that centrally, and then as the data is flowing through, we can immediately solve for that and put those rules in without actually having to make any code changes to existing services.
So the actually, when the data transfer, you actually need to look into the payload so that you know what is inside. Am I correct?
Absolutely, yes. So we look at the information that's actually going through it. We look at the schema. We look at the actual data that's going through as well to say that this data belongs to Patrick. Patrick's a VIP. We need to treat his data a little bit differently versus Joe Bloggs, who is a regular guy. We don't need to be as precautious with him. So we're able to put, it's not just about the schema that we need to be looking at. It's that data in context as well. So has Patrick consented for that sort of data use? Those sort of things we can start applying immediately, just looking at payloads without actually having to know what the service is doing behind the scenes.
Yeah. I think this kind of discussion is also quite hot in Hong Kong, especially the data protections, how we can not only in the open banking but also maybe in healthcare, etc. There are lots of discussions about the data sharing. So I think maybe due to the time is quite limited. If the audience is interested to know more, we can reach out Sonal offline. Maybe I will also try to reach out Sonal offline, because I want to understand better how it practically works, especially you need to tap into the payload, how it impact the performance, how we need to govern the control, etc. So I think this is an interesting concept, and then we want to drill into that later. Okay, so thanks, Son, for your sharing. So yeah, thanks for your support again. Okay, So see you soon.
Thank you.